So welcome to the Plant Guild Design Build a Guild for this month. My name is Nikki Schauder. That should be a bit.ly/plant-guild-guide. And this is a little workbook that I've put together to help us streamline the process of building a guild, making it really simple, bringing it down to the basics so that we're not overwhelmed with the information that guild building normally entails. It comes with a lot of assumptions of what a guild should be or what the designer who's building the guild should know about. And so I want you guys to know that it doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be so complicated, and that one can build a guild in a matter of an hour. So let's do that right now. I'm trying to look for a pen for myself because I wanted to do this myself, but here we go. So first, let's talk about the 7 layers of a food forest. If you are not familiar with the 7 layers of a food forest, this is in your design module 3 in our GIY program, in our GIY core course. So if you're interested in that, you can check out the resources at the end of this talk, but I teach that in depth there, but this is a little bit of an overview. So root crop is one of those layers, ground cover is another, vining or climbing layer is another, herbaceous layer, shrub layer, understory, and canopy. And so here are the sort of definitions of what that should entail if you're confused. Root crop layers, anything that grows underground that is a root crop. And bulbs could be them. Even if you have gladiola bulbs, even if they don't seem like they initially serve a purpose, but if to you an aesthetically pleasing spring garden, is that purpose, that's great. Some people want to have peonies. Some people want to have cut flowers as their crop in the spring. And as mothers, I think that should be incorporated. Bulbs, of course, edible bulbs mean dahlias, mean onions, mean garlic, mean walking onions and perennial onions of all sorts. Alliums, carrots, potatoes in the summer, and again, through the winter, you could grow them. I talked about garlic, carrots, beets, sweet potato, all sorts of things that we'll talk about more. A ground cover is something just to cover the soil because we don't want any bare soil. When we build our guilds, we want to make sure that our soil is sufficiently moist at all times, sufficiently warm at all times, and always covered. Vining or climbing layer. Plan to have an appropriate trellis for your climber. Now, do you need 7 layers of food forest? You may not. If you have a balcony garden, you may not need a food forest. But you do have to have some sort of layers where you're filling in the niches of your space. You can jump ahead and think about a possible dwarf tree in your garden that could also make a good trellis. Sunflowers make a good trellis for vines, or corn, as in the Three Sisters Guild, and that's 3 layers. An herbaceous layer, this layer will probably contain a lot of your desired edibles. Remember that each plant selection you must take into account the considerations we mentioned at the beginning of the book. So choose wisely. And when selecting a shrub, do some research and find fruiting varieties that complement the soil requirements of your chosen edibles. For instance, blueberries like acidic soil, but some vegetables do not like it that acidic. A blueberry shrub can still be inserted in your garden, and then strawberries are those ones, that'll tolerate some of that acidity. Or you may choose a variety of blueberries that's not super, 5.4, it could be up to like 6. You can choose southern high bush varieties. So consider those things in creating this 7-layer food forest. Understory. When selecting the trees in your garden, make sure that the tree's mature diameter still allows enough light to fall on the plants underneath it. And we'll talk about that at the very end when we talk about tree canopy and diameters. And remember that you can always espalier or plant your trees against a fence, just tying their arms, their branches up against a fence or a trellis or a wall. And canopies are few and far between in an urban setting, but in the in the farm, in the rural setting, you may already have existing large oak trees or black walnuts. And what you do when you have a black walnut tree, well, you can create a buffer, which would still allow you to plant a vegetable garden underneath. And so that, in a nutshell, are the layers of a food forest. They don't necessarily need, again, to be 7 layers. You can have more than 7 layers, layers within layers, sub-layers, myco-layers, aqua layers. So many different layers within 7 layers. Or you could have less. If you are in a small space, if you are just planting a guild in a pot, which you can do 3 layers, okay? Now, this concept of guild seems to be a very permaculture concept. So I don't want you to get hung up on that. I do want you to recognize that there are other words for it. They are called groupings, plantings, polycultures, plant guilds is one of my favorites, just because that's how orchestras, sometimes I call it an orchestra, because they're all players of the same system, but they're each doing their own thing, and their thing unique to that plant, to that element, and one element has several functions. So take that with you. Think about these 7 layers of a food forest and see how you can design with this guild way of thinking in mind.